it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today I am very excited because I am back with another tier ranking extravaganza. Listen, I will never be tired of tier rankings. It combines my two favorite things, opinions and making lists. There's really no way you can go wrong here. Today I'm going to be tier ranking fantasy tropes, which are obviously just going to be the most kind of common plot devices, character devices, which are used in the fantasy stories that we know and love. This was very much inspired by Daniel Green's video, which I'll have linked down below. I actually used his list and made a few slight changes to it to kind of match up with my personal fantasy reading style. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in, because I'm sure we all have opinions and I really want to know yours as well. So let's just get to it. All right, to zoom over to the list here, I again pulled Daniel's list, so you might recognize some of these photos, but it's basically just kind of representing some of our favorite tropes within fantasy. The tier ranking structure is kind of a classic one. S tier is at the top, D is at the bottom. D means you fail, I hate you for the most part. Starting with the first one on the tier ranking list, which is the magical object. Personally, I'm kind of neutral on this, and with every single trope here that we're gonna be talking about, all of these can be done successfully. It's not that one is always bad and one is always good. Writer's fantastic at what they do. Anything can be made entertaining. But like I said, I'm kind of neutral on this. This can sort of be done in two different ways. The original way, and I think like when this sort of magical object was initially done within stories, it's supposed to be kind of like a catalyst, but also kind of irrelevant to the story at large. Like it caused the quest, but most of the plot and the things that are more exciting kind of happen during the quest or like after the initial magical object is introduced. But then also there's the interpretation of making the object kind of more relevant to the story and making it something that both the characters and the reader cares about. Again, I'm more neutral. I don't necessarily love it when it like is not explained or explored or later becomes irrelevant. That's not something I like. But also, like, I don't need a magical object kind of starting a quest, but I can appreciate like a well done magical object. So because of that, I'm honestly gonna put this in like high C. It can be good, but I don't need it. Like, it's not something I look for within my fantasy stories. Next up is the chosen one trope. We all know it. Sometimes we love it, sometimes we hate it. You know, an individual ordained by fate to save the world, it can definitely work out, but it's also one of the most overdone tropes that you can kind of encounter in stories. Particularly, I feel like in YA fantasy, in old school fantasy too, it's just used a lot. It's everywhere. It can be done all right. It's not something that turns me off from a story if I see it present, so I'm gonna put it in B tier, given that it is something that can be great or terrible. So it just really depends. We have quests. Okay. I love a journey. I love a journey so much, sometimes even more than like military. Like, I love getting to the battlefield. I love the character development, the fireside tales, the camaraderie, everything that happens within a quest and a journey I am here for. I love traversing through landscapes together. Quests are it for me. I'm a big fan. I feel like they were really popular. They're like less popular now, but I want them to make a comeback because we all need a quest. You know, journey through nature, a good hike. S tier. Quests are it. Next, this is supposed to represent like surprise royalty. Now, a very important distinction here is that this is basically at the end of the story, after everything has happened, all the relevant plot, machinations, the rise and fall, all that shenanigans, surprise, your main character is also secretly the prince of the realm, the missing king, blah, blah, blah. So on top of saving the day, they're also in charge. I don't like this. I think it's pretty lazy writing. I haven't really encountered it in any scenario where it really makes sense. Obviously, if the king or the individual who is secretly royal, if that is presented at the beginning of the story and is part of the larger plot dynamic, I can be down, I'm game for that. In fact, I think that can be really interesting. But if it's just thrown in at the end, like, surprise, you know, you got a new car and you're the king of the realm, like, it's not really for me. Next is something called plot armor. So I didn't actually know this had a name. Like, I knew what it was, but I didn't realize it had a name until I encountered Daniel's video. But plot armor is basically like, you have your main character who likely is like a bumbling idiot who is also like naturally very talented in something, and they find themselves in some very perilous situations at the beginning of the book or the beginning of the series before they've really had proper training or true introduction to whatever skill set they're inevitably going to have, and they survive. They either like take down an enemy with like sheer luck and genius and like grit and natural talent, or they somehow escape something with just insane odds. Here's the deal. Like Daniel referenced, this is necessary. Obviously it can be done poorly, and if it consistently happens over and over and over again where the character doesn't really have development in their skill set, it can be terrible. But like, also, we need action, and we don't want our main character to perish in the first 15 pages of a book. You know what I mean? We need like a catalyst where they survive, but it's a little like, what in the world is going on? But they're not dead, because then where do we go from there? So like, it's necessary because our characters need to encounter some things, but also not perish. So I'm gonna put this ahead of Chosen One. It's not bad. It's not good either. It really truly depends on who is handling it. All right, next one is The Good King. Yeah, this is fine. I'm gonna put this ahead of Chosen One. So the thing with The Good King is it's like, they're great. Well, no, they're not great. They're good. In my opinion, good kings can be a little boring. Like, they're necessary often, like, but to me, I'd rather it be like as a side character, because if they're too good, like, what's the fun in that? You know, like, not all humans are perfect. Like, and that is the same with rulers. I feel like if a fantasy novel just like looks at the people in charge and they're faultless and just perfect and they can make no bad decision, that's like not a real reflection on like humanity. And if they're truly a human, which they often are, I just don't buy it. And plus it like makes them not interesting. Like Robin Hobb, in my opinion, makes rulers that are good and are doing the best they can, but are definitely flawed. But like the good king trope is just like too much. Like, I'm like, I get it. Everyone likes you. Get over it. All right, next we got Magical World, which is going up into S tier. Magic is it. I love a magic system. I love a magical anything. Like, drop me in it. I want to learn about it. That's why we read fantasy. That's why we love fantasy. Epic, magical worlds. Like, yes, low fantasy is a thing, and I don't mind it, but I definitely seek out the fantastical, the magical, if you will. Give it to me. I want it all. I want it all. Next is one that I added, and the reason why they look so stressed out is it's because it is the unready royal. So to me, this really contrasts the surprise royal, because it usually occurs at the very beginning of the story. Like, the main element of the plot is we're following a main character that at the beginning of the book is dropped into a political scenario that they were not trained or prepared for in any way, shape, or form. Either they're now in charge, or they have found out that they're related to someone and they have this like lots of influence. Maybe they're dropped in from another world, but they're related and they're like included in central court politics. I love this because, one, you can immediately empathize with the character. Two, you see them have to be like scrappy, figure out what to do, make alliances, and kind of navigate court politics without dying. It's personally one of my favorite tropes. I always think it's really interesting, and I also really love court politics and kind of like maneuvering behind the scenes and like manipulating people in fantasy novels. I think it's great. So I'm gonna put this high, because I'm gonna put this above Magical World, because I would read this without magic involved. Like, this is something I would love with magic, but would read without magic, if you know what I mean. All right, next is also one I added, and it is a thief with a good heart. So this is a character trope that I also really, 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 really enjoy. It's the character that, you know, is not morally perfect. They will likely cheat at cards. They will probably steal your purse. But at the end of the day, like, if the world is ending, they're gonna help you out. And I feel like this sort of thief with a good heart is present in a lot of books, and I really also enjoy a heist novel, or just individuals who are like almost all good, but they're also kind of bad. I just think it's a really entertaining character dynamic, and I really enjoy it when it's present within the story. So I'm gonna put this also high. Wow, wait, why is Quest so high? Okay, wait. We gotta do some rearranging here. I'm gonna move Quest down to A tier. Yeah, okay, I'm good with this. These are like buzzwords, like, okay, would I pick this book up immediately because of these things? Yes. All right, so the next one is the final showdown between the good force versus the evil force, like the final boss takedown. This does not necessarily mean the final battle. Those two things could technically happen together, but I feel like I often encounter them separately in the way that like the final battle is happening concurrently. But separate to the final boss takedown. Usually like our main character and like a small group will break away from this main military kind of showdown to take out the evil force. I enjoy this in books. It's not something that is like my favorite part of the story usually, but obviously it can be very satisfying. But I wouldn't say it's the most satisfying plot element. But I also understand that it's definitely necessary. If you have an evil force, you gotta fight them. So like, I'm not saying it shouldn't happen. It's just not something that I particularly care a lot. Oh, not D. But it's gonna be at like the end of B. It's fine. All right, next one is another one I added in, which I think is fun. And it's another kind of like play on the royals trope, but this is the illegitimate child trope. So again, different than the surprise royal or the unprepared royal, because this is a character who can be central or even a side character. They're essentially raised in a very specific scenario of being related to royalty, but not treated like royalty, but also not treated like the common person. They're sort of in this bizarre in-between place. They're often used for unsavory positions within court or fantasy settings like the assassin, the spy. And what I enjoy with this character is often the character exploration of them being torn between duty and also individualism. And the character and the photo I use for this in this tier ranking is actually fits from Robin Hobb's Farseer trilogy. But I really like it because I feel like it creates a really interesting character dynamic and really kind of shows how unfair the fantasy world can be, because usually the illegitimate character is really taken advantage of and kind of is set in this weird other outside world experience to both the court and like the day-to-day existence of the common people within this fantasy setting. So I personally really enjoy it, and I think it allows for a lot of character work. So A tier for me, but behind quest, because I mean, if that character goes on a quest, even better, but you know, that's just me. All right, moving on. We have the old, wise, wizard, mentor character, the person that our main character can rely on to not only show him the ropes, show him the world, but could be an emotional support, you know, someone to look up to and to emulate. They're kind of the best, right? Like Gandalf, like any character that's sort of this like all-knowing, like wise character. We root for our characters to actually listen to them. They often do not, but like we love them nonetheless. So this is going into high A tier, the top of A tier. Also, I'll check to make sure these inter rankings within here are, you know, I'll lock them in at the end. All right, next is Dark Magical Forest. So this I think is an interesting one because I feel like it was really popular in like the 80s within fantasy, but also I feel like it's definitely making a comeback with a lot of the popular like fairy tale retellings, which are often set within or on the outskirts of a dark magical forest, which I love. I love a fairy tale retelling, and a dark magical forest I think provides a really great ambiance-filled setting, and I love when it's sort of this mysterious, otherworldly forest that's almost like a character in itself. Ooh, entertaining. That's going high on the list as well. All right, next we have the Dark Lord. Similar to kind of what I said about the Good King, I don't like when characters are just simply good or bad and there's no range in between. Don't get me wrong, there can be some really great Dark Lord characters that are scary and really awesome to read about, but I think the most terrifying characters are the ones that you can kind of weirdly relate to because you understand how they got there. And oftentimes with the Dark Lord characters, they're just this sort of figure of evil without true explanation or character development. Again, can be necessary and something that can be very entertaining, but I'm gonna kind of put it in the same place as the Good King. They can be good, but they can also be boring, and I also think they can be poorly done if they're not scary. Like if you have a Dark Lord that's both like not fleshed out or has an interesting background and also not scary, it's game over. All right, moving on. Next we have, let's just do this one. Love triangles? I'm gonna put this at the bottom of C. The thing is with love triangles they can be really terrible, and most of the time they are terrible. And obviously if you're not familiar, a love triangle is primary character falls in love with said character, usually in the first book, and then when the second or third book rolls around, a new character is introduced that catches their eye, and instead of being, you know, communicative or possibly understanding that, you know, relationships evolve and change over time, or even like having like a sort of non-traditional relationship structure, instead there's just a lot of hemming and hawing, communicating behind the back, lots of drama resulting from this love triangle. Don't get me wrong, love triangles, when done well, can be very entertaining and like kind of a guilty pleasure, at least for me. But oftentimes I find them to be really frustrating. And in terms of like romantic tension creating tropes, for me, it's not my favorite. I feel like there's more interesting ways to create sort of romantic tension and conflict within a story without having to like create a sort of unfaithful, someone else catches my eye storyline, because I just feel like it lacks the communication that should be present within any healthy relationship. But that's just how I feel about that. Is it bad if I just decide to move the Chosen One trope down? Because I think I'm going to. Yeah, I feel better about that. All right, moving on, we have magic school. So I've already declared my love for a magical world, but if you really want to up the ante, if you really want to sell me a book almost immediately without having to tell me anything else, just add the word magic school to it and I will immediately buy it. Oh, no, you're going there. Yep, Like, magic school is so much fun. Like, it doesn't even have to be for magic. It could be for assassins. It could be for like sword fighting. I just love a school setting where people are like learning, because there's these camaraderie elements, and plus like you kind of get a deep dive with the historical background of the fantasy world, which I really enjoy. But I'll say magic school is definitely the best, and it's a buzzword for me that will basically sell any book to me at any time. I will buy it. All right, next is The Evil King, which I'm actually gonna put ahead, whoa, not there. I'm gonna put ahead of all the other kind of basic character ones that I've talked about, so the Good King and the Dark Lord, because I think the Evil King is at least the most interesting of these kind of like basic trope characters that are kind of filling a role within a fantasy story. Because unlike the Dark Lord, which tends to be this sort of magical dark force, and the Good King, which is just this sort of like bland, I'm always good and perfect character, at least the Evil King is human, who decided, despite his humanity and his involvement within humankind and like being around people, decided to be bad. At least that is interesting. It's more interesting than just the good guy. I just feel like there's more opportunity with the Evil King character to kind of explore these sort of gray morality, kind of following how he got there. I also find them to generally be way more terrifying, because I often feel like evil kings can reflect the evil more in our everyday life than say like a dark evil force is much more abstract. Like an evil ruler in charge taking advantage of the people that he's supposed to be protecting is not something that is unique to a fantasy setting. This is present in our real life. And because of that, I just feel like it is in general a much more interesting thing to explore, to have present within a story, and something I enjoy more than the ones I have previously mentioned. All right, next we have an epic world. I obviously enjoy an epic world. I don't need a huge giant world with world building, like massive and massive amounts of world building to enjoy a fantasy book. I really like it, don't get me wrong, but there are a lot of fantasy books I have read that didn't have, you know, like multiple kingdoms, all this traveling, all this traversing, all this building that I've still really enjoyed. That being said, it's still going in A category because I want it if they want to give it to me. Like, I would love any of my favorite authors who maybe don't have these like epic fantasy worlds to build one. I would read it, don't get me wrong, but I don't necessarily need it, but I do love it. All right, next is the I'm not like other girls trope. Yeah, I'm definitely putting this at the bottom of D. To be honest, I haven't really feel like I've encountered this a lot. I feel like I find it in two specific settings. The first one is like old YA. This was obviously very common in like, you know, early 2000s YA fantasy, paranormal, whatever, like the Twilights and the things like that. But the only other really place I find it is in poorly written female characters by male fantasy authors, which again, I feel like is getting less prevalent in more modern fantasy. But if you read again something from like the 80s and 90s, the 2000s, it's a lot of wish fulfillment female characters that like hate other women and like are really proud of being unique. So stupid, and I hate the character. Like when I encounter it, it's like my least favorite type of character, because there's nothing wrong with liking things that are different than the mainstream, but the issue is when you make fun of or talk down to in a condescending way other interests. Like, we all can just like what we like that's cool, like let's just live in harmony kind of thing. And again, I feel like I mostly encounter it nowadays when men are just writing bad female characters within fantasy stories, but that is just me. That's just my point of view. All right, next we have The Last Battle. So, unlike the sort of showdown between good versus evil, the final boss fight, the last battle is something I personally think is really great. And I'm gonna put at the top of B, because I feel like while a lot of how you get to this point is maybe more interesting, the build-up, the reason why I like the last battle is because it tends to be a really satisfying way to like see all the pieces come together, all the alliances show up, all the characters tend to congregate in one specific place. You get to see all the different characters think of different strategies, preparations. The sort of before the actual battle happens chapters are some of my favorite always within stories. I just think it's like a great last hurrah with everyone you really, really like. And there's also that anticipation of when the actual battle happens. That being said, when the actual battle happens, I care a little less. And so it's really a lot about that like before moment that I really love, like that's S tier. The actual battle, in most cases, is high B tier. So that's where I ultimately put that. All right, next is the crew, which I'm gonna put at the very top of S tier, because this is essentially, you know, your merry band of people that you ride with through the fantasy story. It's the best. Like, who doesn't love a great multi-POV, or not even multi-POV, just a cast of characters working together, having each other's back, either taking out the bad guy, stealing that artifact, saving the day in some capacity, or maybe destroying the world. It always is entertaining. The character banter, the relationships, just the vibe of it all is just a wonderful thing. You fall in love with casts of characters, and I just think it's the best trope that will never, ever, ever get old. And in fact, I feel like it can only make your story better. All right, we're heading into the home stretch, the last 4 to go through, so let's do this thing. Okay, the prodigy. I'm gonna put this here. So the prodigy kind of aligns a little bit with the chosen one in some ways. It's basically the character that is just good at everything, like the first time they try it. I think it can work with your character if they're good at some things. Like, obviously we have a main character, we want them to be successful, you know? We don't want them to be boring or terrible at everything that they try. I mean, maybe that could work, but it makes sense if they're good at some things, but if they're literally good at everything they try the first time they touch it, it's just kind of boring, and there's a lack of development there, and it just sort of becomes very predictable. All right, next is instant love. I'm gonna put this low C, above love triangle. There is literally one specific instance where I think this can work, but for the most part, I think instant love is kind of lazy writing. Obviously, there could be something called instant attraction, and like people being drawn to each other within books makes sense. So the only time I think this can work is if it's in some sort of like folk fairy tale style retelling, sort of this fate bringing 2 individuals together. Maybe they're connected in some sort of past life scenario. I've encountered instant love, insta love that I've liked. It's definitely very rare, but I don't want to put it in D, because technically it can be done, and I have encountered it done well, and there are specific instances that I don't mind it, but for the most part, usually it really bothers me. And again, instant attraction is fine, but instantly would like give up your whole life or die for someone else without actually knowing anything about them is a little much. All right, next is another one I added, and it is unlocking the evil force. This usually happens at the beginning of the story. Some sort of evil thing or dark matter was locked away thousands of years ago, and somehow at the beginning of the story it is released into the world, and it's like foretold that this would happen, sort of prophesized, if you will. And now people have to kind of come together and prepare to defeat it. You know, at the end of the day, save the world, yada, yada, yada. I think this can actually be a lot of fun. I don't know. I think I like it because there tends to be a lot of research element. There's always a character that has to like dive into the archives and figure out what they did to like save the day 1,000 years ago. And there's usually like maps and journeys and quests and things to gather this type of information. I also think it's kind of like, yes, can be overdone and can be kind of basic, but I love this sort of force. And then there's like other minions that kind of rise and like work in conjunction with this evil force. I don't know. I know it's basic, but I kind of really like it. So I'm gonna put it high B tier, you know? High B tier. All right, very last one. Let's get through this. Hopefully this video wasn't too long and you're bored. It is like the country bumpkin trope. Basically, your main character is from the middle of nowhere, knows nothing about the politics, the magic, anything that's going on, is kind of like plucked. And then through this, the reader, we learn with them. I think it could be a really useful device. Obviously, there's a lot to learn within a fantasy world, and using your main character to have the reader also learn as you go along can be really, really helpful. That being said, it's definitely very overused, similar to a chosen one kind of situation, and in fact, in a lot of ways, I kind of relate it to a chosen one situation. When it's done well, it can be great, and I have encountered it done well a lot, but it also can be really, really frustrating, and I think there are other ways to introduce your world to readers without having to have a character come from some sort of faraway place, make a travel to the city, blah, 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 blah. It can definitely be done, and I have seen that done as well. That being said though, I'm gonna put this at the bottom of B tier. It's not terrible, it's not great, blah, 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 blah. Alrighty guys, that is my tier ranking of fantasy tropes. I would love to know your opinions down below, so please, please tell me your favorite and least favorite kind of buzzwords that you've encountered in stories, as I would love to know. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you soon with another one soon. Goodbye.